So I know a big focus for you is Japan. It seems like right now Japan has a choice to either work with China, as the Chinese Communist Party likes to say, or confront China. What is in store for the future of Japan depending on which choice it makes?
Japan faces a rather dystopian future if it chooses to roll over before the People's Republic of China. Right now, Japan, to its great credit, is beginning to take steps and make noises, saying and doing some of the right and long overdue things that need to be said and done. But those pertain in part to preparations for military confrontation to defend themselves better militarily. And the other aspects are sending the right political messages to say that the defense of Taiwan is the defense of Japan, no longer keeping that as close hold to the chest, as we say in poker, as they have in the past. They've always understood that, but they've never been bold enough to say that publicly in the way that they're conveying that messaging politically right now. So while there's serious and arguably potentially fatal gaps in the Japan-America Security Alliance organization and capability to work together in a crisis, a combat-related crisis, there's important steps that Japan's taking, putting missiles and self-defense units, for example, in the Southwest Islands. But an area that still needs more attention is Japan's defense against Chinese political warfare. They're vulnerable.
Well, before we get into that, you mentioned that Japan faces a dystopian future if they roll over for China. What is at stake for Japan? Why are they making these moves about saying they're going to they would defend Taiwan if China invaded? What's at stake for Japan?
What's at stake, as I laid out in a paper that Center for Security Policy printed called Japan 2040 as a Stark assessment, is that basically Japan will be, by 2040, isolated, impotent, subservient to a vengeful totalitarian China. If it does not get its act together in countering PRC political warfare a lot better than it's been able to do at this point. The problem is that while Japan can get better in working with the United States in pertaining to its military defense, if internally it's divided, if internally it's demoralized, if internally it is subverted in its willingness to use that defensive capability to make the political decisions necessary to defend itself, inevitably it will become what the other title for the book or the paper that was printed is Haiboku Shita Nihon, and it will become a defeated Japan.
Is this paper on 2040, is that operating under the assumption that China would have taken or conquered Taiwan?
Yes. My paper is based on a number of sources. It's got about 120 footnotes, but one of the more important foundations for this assessment of how the Indo-Asia Pacific region looks come the year 2040 is based on a Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments study that was done last year. And it looks out to actually 2035. It says these are the nations that will become vassal states, tributary states of the People's Republic of China by then. These are the states that will be emasculated, that will be isolated. You can name them. They're the Quad. India, Japan, and Australia will be cut off, isolated, and will be the whipping boys, whipping girls, however you want to, whichever gender you want to choose to signify them. They will be the ones that all the other nations will be beating up on as they support Beijing's political objectives in the United Nations and other international organizations, for example, and in whatever core interests that China is claiming at the time. So Japan won't necessarily be militarily occupied. Quick digression here. It could be, if you're to believe CCP propaganda. It could be a nuclear wasteland by then, because recently the CCP, through its propaganda organs, threatened to repeatedly nuke non-nuclear Japan if Japan didn't do what it wanted to regarding Taiwan. But right now, I'm not focusing on military occupation or kinetic warfare that defeats Japan. It's political warfare. China's plan to win without fighting, not without struggle, but without going to large-scale conventional kinetic conflict.
So why would the conquest of Taiwan have such an impact on Japan?
It breaks the first island chain. First island chain is the one of the terms that we use in regional security discussions to say this is the chain that we use to deter China, to keep it from its China dream. And it's a good thing to keep it from its China dream, because that dream is basically a Sino-fascist, expansionist way of taking control, becoming the regional hegemon and ultimately the global hegemon. So the first island chain is key to that. You take Taiwan, and suddenly Taiwan, as I lay out in the first several pages of the paper, Taiwan then becomes the base for the People's Liberation Army ballistic submarines that will fire nuclear weapons, fires nuclear missiles. It becomes the base for those aircraft that are used to subjugate, not necessarily bomb, but just intimidate the Philippines enough to make them abrogate the Philippine or the treaty, the mutual defense treaty with the United States. It gives China the upper hand that it needs to get South Korea to do the same thing, to abrogate that treaty, because the impression will be the U.S. can no longer defend our allies and our friends in the region. And so ultimately, Taiwan falls, Japan becomes militarily isolated. It cannot defend its fishing fleets. It cannot defend its offshore resource extraction industries. It cannot defend its own shipping and the oil, the energy that it needs shipped through the South China Sea, and just about any other line of communication or avenue of approach to Japan, because China and the People's Liberation Army, Navy, and Air Force will dominate those areas. And to get through, any vessel, any ship will need the permission of the Politburo in Beijing, not Tokyo. They will no longer be international waterways and airways.
And as you mentioned, it would be a devastating blow to the United States prestige that it would not be able to protect any country from the Chinese Communist Party, the fall of Taiwan, that is.
By 2040, the United States, and again, this is CSBA, very good analysis, but also my analysis as well. By 2040, under these circumstances, if Japan and the U.S. don't get significantly better at countering China's political warfare, then effectively our operational forces are out of Japan. The bases that we had dedicated to U.S. forces Korea and combined forces Korea will now be staging areas for the PLA, basically Pohang, Osan, the airfield, the ports, places where the PLA Navy, PLA Air Force can just stop off, refuel, get ready to go on patrols with their Russian allies, treaty allies by that point, because you've seen what's been going on between Russia and China in terms of massive expansion of military exercises, massive expansion of cooperation on the defense and security sphere. Well, you can expect that by 2040 there will be a defense treaty between the two of them. And again, that isolates Japan, and that's all part of the chain reaction related to Taiwan falling, Chris, that you asked about.
So by 2040, is China the regional hegemon, or is it a global hegemon?
It's at least the regional hegemon. America is nowhere to be seen. Oceania, which is now basically a neo-colonization out of China with massive numbers of their citizens going down to live and actually end up being, in terms of population in some of those island nations, those small island nations, but large ocean nations. And you understand the distinction of the importance of that term, large ocean nations, because their EEZs go out very, very far, and the resources that those island nations command or own are massive. Well, they're being colonized by China. China is winning them over, buying them over, as you could argue. It's just happened recently in the Solomon Islands. The repressive, draconian repression sponsored or assisted by the PRC is some of the other areas where they're repressing those who are fighting back against Chinese neocolonialism there. Oceania is now basically in the grasp of the PRC, with the U.S. falling back. Those Marine Expeditionary Force, those what we would call a Marine Expeditionary Unit, actually, of about 2,000 Marines and 3 to 5 Navy ships that we have routinely patrolling that part of the world. Those will be replaced by the PLA Marine Corps and the PLA Navy. And that will be the routine military force that those Pacific Island nations see, not the U.S., not the Australians, no one else. That'll be very much dominated. The visibility, the psychological warfare impact of that routine visibility of the PLA will have a tremendous impact on those nations, in addition to the bribery, in addition to the Belt and Road Initiative, infusion of funds and the debt trap diplomacy related to that. That will have a tremendous impact on Oceania. So looking all around the region, not just Northeast Asia, you're looking at Southeast Asia, and vassal states already, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, arguably, but the other nations, Thailand will ultimately abrogate its treaty with the United States. That's the actually quite disturbing vision that I paint in the paper of how that region looks by 2040. So, Shelley, to round out the answer to you, once China consolidates its hegemony in the Indo-Pacific region, of course it's going to fulfill its global ambitions. It is the center of the world. It's the Middle Kingdom. Of course it has to dominate globally. That's the intent.